students, culture and tourism have a mutually beneficial relationship which can strengthen the attractiveness and competitiveness of the regions and countries. Culture is increasingly an important element of tourism product, which also creates distinctiveness in the crowded global marketplace. At the same time, tourism provides an important means of enhancing culture and creating income, which can support and strengthen cultural heritage, cultural production, and creativity. Creating a strong relationship between tourism and culture can therefore help destinations to become more attractive, competitive as locations to live, visit, work, and invest in. Hence, it becomes imperative for people and institutions active in the field of tourism to become familiar with different facets of Indian culture. This unit aims to introduce the Indian theatre, its history, and present form. The main learning objectives are as follows: understand about theatre, insight into the theatre tradition of India, get to know about Sanskrit theatre, knowing folk theatre, knowledge about modern theatre. So let's start. What is theatre? Theatre is a collaborative form of performing art that uses live performers, usually actors or actresses, to present the experience of the real imagined event before a live audience in a specific place, which is often a stage. The performers may communicate this experience to the audience through combination of gestures, speech, song, music, and dance. Elements of art such as painted sceneries and stagecraft such as lighting are used to enhance the physicality, presence, and immediacy of the experience. The tradition of writing and enhancing plays is quite old in India. Along with plays, theatre had also developed. In India, different regions have developed their own tradition of popular plays. Although the ancient tradition of Sanskrit plays could not develop in the medieval times, the popular drama tradition kept advancing uninterrupted through the ages. In modern times, the drama tradition has emerged in the new form. The exposure with the vast West brought in the influence of the Greek tradition and the modern Western theatre tradition. Modern Indian theatre has benefited both from the popular folk tradition and the Western drama tradition. A theatre is an elitist art form, and while going to the theatre, one gets a wonderful opportunity to explore the human condition and gather together. It is an intricate part of the human history because it is having the capability to show the best and worst sides of human nature. In a modern world, most of the people are having a question about why is theatre important and is it really useful to improve creativity level? Yes, it is. People might easily connect with history through the stage and make an effective emotional connection to the roots. The theatre is the most crucial one for many reasons such as self-discovery, expression, history and education, performing arts, creativity. Performing art is about being creative and it teaches people how to express ourselves more effectively. Theatre tradition in India. Indian theatre is one of the most ancient forms of theatre and it features a detailed textual, sculptural and dramatic effects which emerged in mid-1st millennium BC. The Indian theatre is also defined by the dramatic performance defined by the concept of Natya, which is a Sanskrit word for the drama but encompasses dramatic narrative, virtuosistic dance and music. Indian theatre goes back to the 4th century BC. All-night dance dramas known as Yakshagana and popular and are held throughout India, particularly to mark major festivals. They combine song and dance and are based on the Hindu epics and mythology and typically feature a story with good winning over the evil. Indian theatre dates back around 5,000 years. The earliest form of Indian theatre was Sanskrit theatre that emerged sometime around 2nd century BC. It then flourished between the 1st and 11th centuries. Soon after, due to the Islamic conquest, theatre was banned and forbidden. Later, village theatre was encouraged across the subcontinent in an attempt to reassert indigenous values and ideas, developing in a large number of regional languages from the 15th to the 19th centuries. Modern Indian theatre developed during the period of British rule. Indian theatre has three specific periods: the classical period, the traditional period, and the modern period. In early forms, theatre performers were often narrative and included recitation, singing, and dancing. The earliest contribution to the Indian theatre came from Bharata Muni, who wrote the 36 books of Natya Shastra. The Natya Shastra describes a theory of theatrical performance based on the style and motion. The classical period is dominated by the Natya Shastra and Sanskrit dramas. Since plays were based on stories, the audience already knew the like histories, folk legends, and epics. Physical elements and movement were heavily incorporated into the dialogue and performance. Kalidas is known as the preeminent Sanskrit playwright and is known as the Indian Shakespeare. Some of his best works include Malvika Agnimitram, Vikramo Vaishya, and Abhijaan Shakuntalam that depict stories of royalty and myth in the old world India. Bhasa is the oldest Sanskrit dramatist to give us a complete play and the famous ancient epic poem, the Mahabharata. In addition, Shudraka was a 5th or 6th century playwright known for the Sanskrit comedy called Mritchakatika. An adaptation of this play was produced in New York in 1924 and made into a movie entitled Utsav in 1984. The traditional period of Indian theatre introduced regional languages and improvisations. The plays were presented verbally rather than using written scripts. In this period, traditions and stories were passed down orally, and the theatre reflected this idea. Narrative, recitation, and singing were also included in the drama of the traditional period. The modern period, on the other hand, is marked by the influence of Western theatre and proscenium stage. A proscenium stage is designed with an arc, separating the stage from the audience, and the spectators watch the play action as if through a picture frame. With the British in India, Western theatre styles including realism and life of the common man were added to the Indian folklore theatre. The pioneer of modern playwright Rabindranath Tagore wrote plays noted for their exploration and questioned nationalism, identity, spiritualism, and material greed. His famous Bengali plays include Chitrangada 1892, The King of the Dark Chamber Raja 1910, The Post Office Dakkar 1913, and Rakta Karabi 1924. The rich chronicle of Indian theatre unveils the fact that Theatre India was always an important part of the rich Indian culture and tradition, and still is the same. In recent times, Indian theatre has acquired a tinge of contemporary attribute in order to benefit the modish requirement of the Indian society. It is difficult to determine the beginning of the theatre and play in India. Some experts feel that it is non-Aryan culture which has contributed significantly to the development of Indian plays. According to some scholars, Indian theatre emerged in the 15th century BC. Vedic texts such as Rig Veda provides evidence of drama plays being enacted during yagya ceremonies. The Indian theatre tradition can be studied in three major important parts: Sanskrit theatre, folk theatre, and modern theatre. Let's look at each one of them. Sanskrit theatre. Rig Veda is the oldest available text in Sanskrit. It makes a reference to various art forms which include music, dance, poetry, etc. But drama has not been included in these art forms. Nevertheless, Mantra Sahitya in the Rig Veda contains Sanlap, Sukta, romantic verses which refer to dramatic literature in its original form. Urvashi and Purvura, romance in Rig Veda is significant in so much as it has been developed in a number of later Sanskrit texts. Famous Sanskrit poet Kalidas had based his epic play Vikramourvashyam on the Urvashi and Puruvarva story. Yajur Veda makes a reference to the term Abhineta, that is actor. Hence, on the basis of these, we can say that theatre culture is very old in India. Indian epic Natya Shastra, written between the 3rd and 5th centuries AD, focuses on two themes: rasa and the means of expressing rasa. Rasa refers to the feeling which is expressed through the play. Natya Shastra talks about 4 ways of expressing feelings. Gestures, angik, acting by the movement of different parts of the body. Oral, vachik, acting through dialogues. Spiritual, sattvic, expression through gestures. Properties, achar, aharya, the material required for the play like colors, dresses and decorations, etc. All these are mentioned specifically in reference to the theme of the play. Bharat has also described ways of managing the stage in his Natya Shastra. Dance and music have been considered as the essential ingredient of the play. There is also a reference to the desirable qualities found in the actor or the abhineta. Ancient India observed a tradition of organizing plays on important occasions like marriage, travel, coronation ceremony, making a ceremonial entry into a house, griha pravesh or a city, birth of a child or other special occasions. Plays for ruling classes used to be enacted in the forts or the temples, but those for common people could be played in any open space or even during travel. Ancient Sanskrit texts have elaborate references to the size of the theatre. Natya Shastra refers to the theatres of a squarish size. Other books talk about various kinds of stages and galleries. From the above references, it seems that various aspects of the theatre and organizing plays were contemplated upon in ancient India. India also has an old and long-lasting tradition of full-length poetic plays, which are called Sanskrit dramas, because they were written mainly in Sanskrit. In fact, however, they combine both classical Sanskrit with Prakrit or different forms of vernacular languages. The tradition was maintained for nearly 1200 years, which makes it the longest continuous performing tradition of any drama text in the world. The tradition of performing Greek tragedies, for example, lasted only about a half millennium, while the continuous performing tradition of Shakespearean dramas lasted less than a century. The earliest Sanskrit plays were written in early centuries AD, and they gradually ceased to be performed at some time during the 15th century, when Sanskrit was no longer a living spoken language and Muslims had invaded northern India, where the tradition had been thriving. The Sanskrit dramas cover a wide range of subjects and types of plays. They include full-length poetic love stories, political plays, and plays intrigues, as well as shorter farces and one-act love monologues. The foremost drama genre is centered on the character of a noble hero. These heroic dramas, often with plots derived from tradition, are called natkas. Another important type of drama is a kind of social play, dealing with the kinds of human relationships. These plays, mostly invented by their authors, are called prakarans. Let's now see the folk theatre. It is believed that folk theatre existed in ancient India along with the rich classical Sanskrit theatre. With the passing of time, the Sanskrit tradition faded, but the folk tradition continued unhampered. A fusion of music, dance, drama, stylized speech, and spectacle, folk theatre is a composite art form with deep roots in local identity and native culture, an important indigenous tool of interpersonal communication. This form of theatre reflects the social political realities of its times. India has a long, rich, illustrious history of folk theatre. In ancient times, Sanskrit dramas were staged at seasonal festivals or to celebrate special events. Between the 15th and 19th centuries, actors and dancers were given special places of distinction in the court of several Indian kings. For instance, in the Indian century, the Tamasha folk theatre was patronized by the powerful Peshwas of the Maratha kingdom. The Maharajas of Travancore and Mysore also competed with each other to establish the superior talent of their drama troupes. The Maharaj of Benares was the producer and patron of Grand Ram Leela, a 31-day play based on Ramayana with spectators numbering in thousands. This led to the infusion of local myths, costumes, masks into an ancient form of drama, resulting in the evolution of diverse regional styles of folk theatre. This tradition continued in the princely courts of India even under British rule. In the absence of urban theatre in most Indian cities, with the exception of metros like Kolkata, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai and Bengaluru, folk theatre has kept the rural audiences entertained for centuries. It has also played an important part in the growth of modern theatres in different languages. Bharatendu Harishchandra, in the 19th century drama writer who is also known as the father of Hindi theatre, used to combine folk conventions with Western theatrical forms that were popular at that time. Rabindranath Tagore plays reflect the influence of ball singers and folk theatre too. Today, folk art is considered an art form that keeps the basic elements of drama intact while taking on the stories and flavors of the regions where it stems from. This very aspect makes folk theatre a vibrant and vital aspect of Indian intangible cultural heritage. As many as 20 different forms still exist and flourish in different parts of India. These include Ram Leela and Ras Leela in northern India. Ram Leela, literally Rama's plays, is a performance of the Ramayana epic in the series of scenes that include song, narration, recital and dialogues. The Ras Leela or Ras dance or Krishna Tandav is a part of the traditional story of Krishna described in Hindu scriptures such as Bhagavad Purana and literature such as Geet Govinda, where he dances with Radha and her Sakhis. Jatra in Bengal, the word Jatra means journey or going. The origin of Jatra, intrinsically a musical theatre form, is traditionally credited to the rise of Sri Chaitanya's Bhakti movement, wherein Chaitanya himself played Rukmani in the performance of Rukmani Haran, the abduction of the charming Rukmani from Krishna's life story, a first definite presentation of this theatrical spectacle. Akiyanat, Kirtaniya and Bidesiya in Bihar and Assam. The play Bidesiya has primarily 5 characters, namely Bidesiya, Batohi, Sundari, Randi and Diwar. The play is named after the central character Bidesi, who represents the predicament of a young village man who is forced to migrate to a foreign land, Bidesh, in search for a better living. His wife Sundari is a simple woman devoted to her husband. When in Bidesh, her husband meets and falls in love with another woman typified as Randi, referring to her socially unacceptable position. Batohi is a wise man of the village, one who is wont to be travelling frequently, and so is the name of the world. He is a messenger who goes to town carrying the wife's messages. Another character is referred to as Diwar, a young man who, in the absence of Sundari's husband, tries to come closer to her and exploit her sexually. Khayal and Katputli in Rajasthan. Katputli is a join of 2 Rajasthani language words. Kat means wood and Putli means a doll. Katputli means a puppet which is made entirely from wood. However, it is made out of wood, cotton cloth and metal wire. Katputli is a string puppet theatre native to Rajasthan, India, and is the most popular form of Indian puppetry. Being a string marionette, it is controlled by a single string that passes it from the top of the puppet over the puppeteers. Now moving on to Tamasha. Tamasha in Maharashtra. Tamasha is a traditional form of Marathi theatre, often with singing and dancing, widely performed by local or travelling theatre groups within the state of Maharashtra, India. It has also been the subject of several Marathi films. Some Hindi movies have also been included Tamasha themed songs known as Lavanis in the past. Swang and Nautanki in Punjab. Nautanki or Swang is the best known form of theatrical entertainment in the northern part of India, especially Uttar Pradesh. Nautanki is one of the most popular folk performances from the South Asia, particularly in northern India. Before the advent of Bollywood, the Hindi film industry, Nautanki was the biggest entertainment medium in the villages and towns of northern India. Nautanki's rich musical composition and humorous entertaining storylines hold the strong influence over rural people's imagination. Bhan Jashan in Kashmir. Bhan Jashan dance is a simple yet very attractive dance form of Kashmir. The term Bhan carries the meaning of the clown and Jashan means celebration. On every occasion in Kashmir, the dance troupe performs this dance form. Whether it is a childbirth, wedding ceremony or any other festive event, this dance form is performed at the fullest. Karyala in Himachal Pradesh, Bhavai in Gujarat, Manch in Madhya Pradesh, Kudiyattam and Chabita in Kerala, Bhagwat Mel in Tamil Nadu, Yakshagan in Karnataka, Kuchipudi in Andhra Pradesh are some of the other forms. Folk dances of India are charismatic. They are the backbone of the country and represent a cultural impression. You can witness the diversity and variety of this cultural legacy in the dance forms as well. Whether it is a wedding, childbirth, festive season, no event goes without dance performances. These folk performances are accompanied with several musical instruments that gleefully and rhythmically mark the occasion. Now let's move on to the modern theatre. As has been said earlier, the modern Indian theatre draws itself from three different traditions, that is, the Sanskrit theatre tradition, folk theatre tradition, and the tradition of the Western theatres. It is actually the third which can be said to form the basic of the modern Indian theatre. The Sanskrit tradition had evaporated in the medieval times, and there was no significant trend of plays being performed for the ruling classes. Modern Indian theatre as we know it today has a legacy that is influenced by and draws inspiration from various sources. Modern theatre, or historically what can be clearly identified as the Western proscenium style of theatre, was not introduced in India before the late 18th century at the time of consolidation of the British Empire in various parts of India. It was through the British that Western proscenium style theatre reached Indian shores. Modern Indian theatre started after the advent of the British in India. The British developed Calcutta in the east, Mumbai and Surat in the west, and Madras in the south as important centres of trade and administration. They also set up theatres in these cities for their entertainment. Levdev, a gentleman of Russia origin, established a theatre by the name of Bengali theatre. Abridged versions of plays like Disguise in Love is the Best Doctor were enacted on 21st November 1765, well over 200 years ago. Many rich drama lovers followed the example of Levdev and started conducting shows in their houses, lawns and gardens. This set the motion, a process in which many theatres were established and plays enacted. The modern Indian drama was greatly influenced by the West. It therefore contained all the features of the Western theatres. The ancient Indian tradition rested on a happy ending of plays, whereas in Western tradition the tragic endings was generally in vogue, even though comedy was not completely absent there. Although influenced, modern Indian theatre was not merely an imitation of the West. On the contrary, it was a product of certain Indian social developments. The processes of modernization and renaissance in the Indian society brought about socio-cultural changes, and these changes were reflected in the field of art and literature. All this influenced the Indian theatre as well. The Indian Communist Party had been founded between the war years in 1922, and along with it came the Indian People's Theatre Association (IPTA), which was its cultural wing. IPTA's work took hold in the 1940s. The organization had branches all over country, but the ones in Bengal and Mumbai particularly had several talented people in their ranks, all from the middle class with dreams of a classless society. They came up with a kind of theatre that was entirely portable and had a political agenda that was obviously at the same time both anti-colonial as well as anti-fascist. With the birth of the IPTA movement, it became increasingly evident that the time had come to challenge the convention of the commercial and politically dispassionate and non-ideological Indian proscenium theatre that had been established from the end of 19th century to over a period of approximately 70 years. The decade after the 70s witnessed an important development when theatre broke out of the auditoria and surfaced on the open streets and lanes. This heralded a significant change in the world of theatres by adding a new dimension. But it did not anyway diminish the significance of the stage-based plays. To summarize, we can conclude that the theatre tradition in India is quite old. Much like the Greek tradition, playwriting and the manual prescribing their staging have developed in an unprecedented manner. Sanskrit tradition has given us a text like Natya Shastra and writers like Kalidas and Bhavbhuti. The folk tradition in India is as old as the Sanskrit tradition. The Sanskrit tradition was obstructed for about 1,000 years, but the folk tradition continued unhampered. About 25 different folk forms have continued to be active from centuries in different parts of the country. They are still popular and continue to entertain the enthrall their audiences. This tradition has contributed in no small measure to the development of Indian theatre. Modern theatre was started in India by the British, who established theatres for their entertainment. Watching and reading plays of Shakespeare and his Ben inspired Indians to start and set up their own theatre. The early Indian theatre was influenced by Elizabethan theatre. Later, it also incorporated elements from either Western theatrical forms, Sanskrit, or other folk forms. This session was an attempt to familiarize you all with the Indian theatre and its major types during the evolution of Sanskrit theatre, folk theatre and modern theatre. Hope you found this session interesting and it has been able to give you a fair idea of how theatre is a reflection of the happenings in the society and how it evolved with time. See you, take care and happy learning.